Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Watching the Saints last night, saw Saints Hall of Famer Lance Moore tweet, "This is embarrassing," with what transpired on Monday Night Football. Succinct and very honest. Always like when we get a few minutes with Lance, and we appreciate him jumping aboard with us now. Lance, we appreciate you, man. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm looking forward to the end of this 24-hour rule. So this will actually be the last time I'm going to talk about this game, and we are going to move forward and on to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You know what, Lance? Honestly, there's not a lot about last night that I want to talk about. I mean, it's what it was, right? I'm more concerned with what went wrong and how they fixed it. So let's, if we could, start right there. What is missing on this offense right now?
Consistency. I mean, that's the thing for me that has been the biggest issue. There hasn't been, I guess you could say the Raiders game, the offense was pretty consistent, right? But that's a singular game. We haven't been able to stretch good performances together at all this entire season. And for me, that's the issue. We can move the ball up and down the field, but there's times when we can't. There's times when we can't convert on third down. We're getting penalties still. We're turning the football over. And that, to me, is losing football. And that's the reason why our offense can't seem to be consistent.
Yeah. You know, Lance, you missed the back-to-back-to-back 7 and 9 seasons by a year. Your last year in New Orleans, of course, was 2013. So 14, 15, 16, it felt a lot like what we're seeing right now. You'd win one, you'd lose two. You'd win two, you'd lose three. It's when you can't string together wins, it's how you end up with a season like this. So is there anything you've seen that makes you believe they can stabilize this thing and start stringing together some good performances?
Well, I think so, but I mean, just hearing you say 7 and 9, that sounds like a stretch to me. Just where we are today,
yeah.
Obviously there's 17 games, so 7 and 9 is beyond a stretch. But I just, trying to find 4 more wins on the schedule seems far-fetched to me. As we're sitting more than halfway through the season, and we only have 3. If we continue to be the Saints team that we've been this season, and I use the term "we" because I still feel like I'm a piece of the organization, then I don't expect there to be too many more wins. Now, I understand that we have a million injuries, right? Guys that have missed time and are going to miss time that has made it more difficult for us to perform at the top level and to win games. I get that. But guess what? Everybody at this point in the season is dealing with injuries, and a lot of people are dealing with injuries at significant spots just like we are. Because guess what? They're all significant. It's not like we can just go out to the street and start replacing guys. The NFL does not work like that. The roster does not allow space for those types of situations to happen. And honestly, most of the people that are on the streets aren't going to be able to come in and help you anyway. So I think that this team needs to focus on whatever it takes to get better, to get healthy, and to win one game. I said that a couple of weeks ago. They went out and beat the Raiders, and everybody's feeling good again. But as bad as I feel today, and I'm sure most of Who Dat Nation is feeling today as they're calling for DA's head, Andy Dalton's job, and others, we are still only 1 game out of first place in the division, and we play everybody in the division again. So there is a little piece of hope there that we can right the ship and start playing good football and try to maintain that throughout the rest of this season.
He's on Twitter at LanceMoore16. I want to ask you about Pete Carmichael. This guy, look, he was the OC while you were there. When you watch this offense, does it look like the rhythm and flow of the offense you played in?
No.
So what's different?
That's a pretty obvious.
But can we also say, Lance, like the execution is obviously very different, right? I mean, there's no Drew Brees, there's no you or Marcus Colston. I mean, there's
that was going to be what I was going to say next. Is we don't have number 9, and it's foolish of us to think even last year, everybody was thinking, oh, well, we still got Sean. We've got some guys that can make plays. We'll be fine on offense. And we saw how we struggled on offense last year. And, this year is more the same. I mean, we're so spoiled to have both Sean and Drew for so long that the expectation or the standard was that greatness. Everybody expects, well, we're still running that Sean Payton offense. Well, guess what? Sean's not there. And then I'm not taking anything away from Pete Carmichael. I feel like Pete does a really good job and is a very capable coordinator. I mean, we saw that in 2012. Sean wasn't around, but we had Drew. So it makes up for a lot when you have an all-time great as your quarterback. So I think that it's been hard to kind of reinvent what we do offensively. And I think that's part of the problem, right? We haven't evolved maybe as much as some other teams have. And it's hard to think that you're going to, be the same team without number 9 back there. And that, to me, I'm not saying that we shouldn't expect greatness from the team, but I do think it has to look a little bit different. We can't call games as if we've got number 9 back there. We've got guys that have a different skill set. And it's a difficult situation to be in, but I think, like all great coaches and I think all great systems, they've got to change over time and they've got to evolve and innovate as well. I mean, you see a lot of offenses around the league that are doing things that are different and new and fresh, and it's harder for defenses to stop them because they haven't seen them before. They haven't seen them quite as much. Well, if I'm a defensive coordinator and I know I'm going against that Saints offense and they don't have Drew Brees back there, I'm going to defend it a whole lot differently. And I feel like that's what we've had to deal with the last couple of seasons.
Lance Moore is with us. So there was a big story last week about Sean Payton being in the Saints facility the week of the Raiders game. Do you make anything of that? Like, could Sean being around?
No.
Okay.
I don't think anything of it at all. Not a single thing of it. If I'm a player and Sean comes in, I'm going to say, hey, Coach, good to see you. How you been? And keep it moving. I'm not going to play harder because Sean Payton came in to see us. I'm not going to think there's anything extra on the football game because Sean Payton was in the building. It doesn't work like that. Sean's not putting in the hours with those guys. Those guys aren't paying him any mind. He's not coaching them anymore. So I read something on Twitter about Sean being in the building and then the Saints all of a sudden go out and dominate the Las Vegas Raiders. Well, the Las Vegas Raiders are a terrible football team. Let's call a spade a spade. They aren't good. And if we weren't able to beat them, then we have way bigger issues than worrying about who's walking in and out of that building in any given week.
I love it. I love how emphatic that was. Because honestly, Lance, I mean, it was kind of a logical conclusion that a lot of people drew. Like, did Sean come in there and jump in meeting rooms and stuff like that? But it's good to hear.
Those are people who don't or have never spent any time in an organization before, right? Anybody can make any kind of inference on why what has happened happens, but unless you've been in those buildings and been in those meetings, then you don't really know the work that goes in there. It sounds good and cool and maybe even gives Sean even more aura around him to think that he had that type of an impact on what was going on. But I just don't see that, and I'm not going to ever put any time into thinking like that.
I love it. That's why your perspective is appreciated. 2 more things for you. One, there's the Dalton Jameis question here. Like, at some point, do you consider making a change and going back to Jameis Winston?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you have given Andy an opportunity, and the offense has looked better at times. But for me, it's more about wins and losses than it is statistics. And I understand when Jameis was playing, the offense was hot, very, very hot and cold, but he's been out for so long. I feel like, what is there to lose by giving him an opportunity? You know what you've got in Andy. He's a guy that's, capable of moving the ball up and down the field, but is shown to take some sacks and to turn the ball over a little bit. I mean, we paid Jameis to come in and to be the starter. He was essentially taken out, at least it's my understanding, because he was injured. Mm-hmm. Now that he's healthy and we still haven't won too many games, I mean, I just feel like if there's something that could give us a little bit of a shot in the arm, because I feel like we've been dealt a ton of blows, specifically with injuries throughout this season. I feel like it could be him, and it could be the big play. So if I'm DA, I would think about it. I'm not saying that I'm making that decision for, this week, but I would have definitely thought about it in this game yesterday. And moving forward, I think my leash would be a little bit tighter.
Lance Moore is with the Saints Hall of Famer. Last thing. Look, I mean, you played in the league for a long time, 11 seasons. You played for different head coaches. What's your thought on Dennis Allen as a head coach? Do you think he can get this thing, maybe not even this year, but this thing turned around and winning again?
Look, I like DA. I've known DA since 2006, and I've really grown to like him as a person just as much as I've liked him as a coach. I mean, he's a good dude, works hard, cares about the guys, knows his X's and O's. But honestly, I can't answer that question for you because I've never been in that meeting room or those locker rooms with him as the head coach, right? Like I saw him as an assistant D-line coach. I saw him as a DB coach all those years ago, and I've never been in there with him as a head coach. So I can't give you a total answer on that. But just like any other situation when a new coach comes in and is dealt kind of a little bit of a tough hand, I think you have to give him time. I can't sit here and say, hey, man, we got to go in a different direction. This is not the right guy for the job. Sometimes it takes time, right? And I talked about it all summer, like, he's going to be able to kind of take up a lot of what Sean has built and kind of add his couple things in. Well, maybe that's not what's best for this team. Maybe it's best for this team, for him to put his total imprint on this team and to make up this roster the way that he wants to make it up. And those things can't happen in a single offseason. So I think the jury is still out. I think he's capable, but time will tell, obviously, if he's the right guy or not.
Man, a willingness to answer tough questions passionately. I love it. Lance Moore, Saints Hall of Famer, on Twitter at LanceMoore16. And everybody here wants to hear you keep saying we forever, so keep that up, man. We appreciate your time.
No problem. And I know in the future we're going to have bigger conversations to have on the direction of this organization. I'll be ready then.
We appreciate it, Lance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.